7:42, good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Yeah, thank you for all your comments about wedding dresses. Actually, on that subject, Rosemary has called in, or she's emailed in. No, she's, emailed.
Yes, emailed, yeah.
She said, this was my wedding dress. I think we got a picture of it 53 years ago.
Oh,
see, a mini. Isn't that lovely? Still got it, and we're still in love.
You see, now that is lovely.
But lots of wedding dresses aren't timeless, are they? They actually set you in a particular decade or a fashion style. Nada, we're talking about this, and we'll talk about it a bit more in a minute. Nada says, Katie Price is... we're talking about this because Katie Price is selling hers. Nada says, Katie Price, that her wedding dress was the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Really tasteless. Yes. I'm not surprised she wants rid of it.
Karen in Stockport says, I've had two of them. Both went straight in the bin along with the husbands. There you go.
Oh, wow.
Fair enough, though. Let's go through the papers this morning. We're joined by the Deputy Editor of Spike, Fraser Myers, and writer and journalist Emma Wolfe. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Let's have a look at the Sun on Sunday, should be Fraser, and another U-turn from the leader of the Labour Party.
The U-turns are really piling up for Keir Starmer, aren't they?
Quite a lot, isn't it?
So this latest one is he's going back on a pledge he made when he was campaigning to become Labour leader. He said that he would close down the Yarswood detention centre, the immigration detention centre, and he would stop people from being detained there indefinitely. Now he's changed his tune. He says we're going to get on top of the asylum backlog, which is obviously a major problem, and we're going to improve the conditions in these centres rather than closing them down. I mean, you know, you can disagree whether that's a good or bad idea, but it just sort of adds to the sense that anything Starmer says, you know, could be contradicted, sometimes within a year, sometimes within a week. Only last...
Is it a U-turn, or is it he just rethought something through? And maybe as he sees the prospect of real power, only about a year away, he's having to be more pragmatic.
Well, sometimes, you know, he's looking at the polling, or might be looking at the focus groups and things like that, but there is a sense that there are so many things where he has changed his mind or rethought on, and, you know, that would be disappointing to people who put their faith in him, the Labour membership in particular. I mean, so for instance, he's changed his mind on tuition fees. He's gone back on his Green pledge recently.
Free movement.
Freedom of movement. Again, you know, it seems to be he is moving to a more pragmatic position on a lot of these issues. He's moving more towards where the country is. But there is a level of, you know, these were promises or pledges, you know.
Priorities.
Yeah, he could downgrade them to priorities now. So there is a level of dishonesty there, and I think it's right to call that out.
Or uncertainty as well, this sense that you immediately rush to say the popular thing, we'll shut them down, and then actually when it's thought through, he has to kind of row back and, as you say, take a more pragmatic approach.
Well,
that doesn't inspire confidence.
And but you do want, also, I do like politicians with principles as well. Even if I don't agree with the principles, I think that's an important thing that's missing from politics. Because, you know, politicians can either be, I think it was Tony Benn who said politicians can either be sort of weather vanes, or I can't remember what the other one is, but you can
something else.
You can set the weather or you can follow it, essentially.
Yeah.
And, you know, politics is not a fixed thing. If you're in politics, you shouldn't be around just to follow the opinion polls. You should be changing people's minds, winning people over to your ideas, changing things for the better. And so it's disappointing to have actually not just in Keir Starmer but also Rishi Sunak. You know, we have two kind of politicians that are playing it safe. Not really, you know, not making any bold gambles, and essentially just following the polls, which is not very inspiring at all.
Can we have a look at this in the Mail on Sunday about e-bikes, Emma?
Yeah.
Because there's been another fatality of a young man on an e-bike, hasn't there?
Yeah, there has. And these bikes, lethal, they're being called lethal in the Mail on Sunday. They can go, I mean, they're meant to go around 15 miles an hour, but they can go up to 30 miles an hour, which is...
Dangerous speed.
Dangerous speed. It's also faster. If you think about these many areas of London are 20 miles an hour zones, so that's way over that, and it's about as fast as a moped. Some of these e-bikes, they're big, they're heavy. You can soup them up. There's a call now for them to have number plates and for their drivers to be registered, because they're reaching dangerous speeds. They're killing, as you say. There's been fatalities. There's a woman right near where I live in Dalston who was killed by an e-bike. And as a cyclist myself with a toddler on the back, they can be extremely dangerous when they zoom by you.
Even
and
have
they
to
are
wear helmets and things.
well, you don't have to wear a helmet.
You should do at that speed.
You should.
Well, it's
exactly.
recommended for any bike, isn't it?
Of course, it's recommended. Yeah, exactly.
But I had an e-bike, and I was quite. I couldn't get used to the feeling of it being in control rather than me sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of those ones that you pedalled and then the power came in. But I just didn't like it because it was like being on a motorbike.
Exactly.
It's something that
they can reach speeds, moped sort of, levels. Really, really dangerous. They are very, as I say, very heavy, and they really can cause a lot of injury and damage to people. So yeah, there's calls from MPs and from campaigners that there needs to be a lot more regulation of these. You get delivery drivers just zooming around, with lots of stuff on the back. And
yes, they're using them a lot, aren't they?
Completely unregulated. Yeah. So,
and untrained, you don't have to be.
No.
You have
and e-scooters
you have
as
to
well.
pass a test for motorbikes.
Yeah.
But you don't for a motorised bike, which seems a bit crazy in retrospect, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think we do want to make use of these new technologies like e-bikes and e-scooters, but at the moment, thinking about e-scooters in particular, because there isn't really a kind of regulation or a law, that's when you do get people, riding them on pavements where it becomes dangerous.
They do ride them on pavements, but also the fact that you don't own it, that you've thought about it, and you've safely bought one and invested in it. The fact that you can just rent them by the hour, I think that encourages this kind of Wild West feeling that people just grab them, zoom across, whatever, have some fun. You see big groups of kids also doing quite dangerous things on e-bikes and e-scooters, and it can be, if you're an elderly person or if you have a small child on the back or whatever, it can be really quite frightening to be surrounded by all that.
I'm sure you might have a view on that. gbviews@gbnews.com. I'm sorry it's a bit short and sweet this hour, you two, but we'll have longer next hour and get through all these stories. Fraser, Emma, thanks very much indeed.